Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. I hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you very much, and I'm so delighted you've joined me for part 2 of our story. A fascinating story, a woman who obviously does not have a very good relationship with her daughter-in-law, who is very closed off. So we're about to find out what happens when her grandson comes to stay with her. So let's continue with part 2 of our story. There was something so pitifully gloomy about my son this afternoon. He was 6 foot tall, but when he walked away from me, I'd noticed his shoulders were slumped over, and when he got into the car to sit next to Sasha, he had a hangdog expression on his face. I didn't know what was going on with him, but I had an instinctive, profound sense that he was miserable about something. I sneakily suspected that Sasha Fontaine was the cause of his obvious disquiet. I could not be sure, of course, but something was clearly irking him, and I needed to get to the bottom of it. I suspected the beans would be spilt when we got together for coffee in a week's time or so at the gingerbread house. I was certainly looking forward to it. I could feel a tiny cold hand slipping into mine as my grandson Oliver looked up at me with an expression of devotion on his angelic face. He was pulling me eagerly by the hand.
"Grammy, are you coming? I want to introduce you to Spikes, my dinosaur. You said you wanted to meet my pink and purple dinosaur."
"Of course I want to meet him. I'm looking forward to it very much, love." My husband smiled at me as he watched Oliver leading me by the hand into his bedroom to show me his pink and purple dinosaur. "Well, isn't he lovely?" I said, holding the stuffed animal to my chest. "I mean, you can go to sleep with him every night. And even though he's got spikes running down his back, they don't hurt at all, do they?"
"No, they don't. That's why Mummy bought him for me. She said while she's away, I could cuddle up to Spikes all night long."
"That was very nice of your mummy," I said.
"Listen to this, Grammy,"
said Oliver, pressing the battery-controlled button on the dinosaur. "I'm hungry. I want to eat leaves. Don't worry, I won't eat you. I'm vegetarian. My name is Spikes. I'm a cuddly dinosaur. I would like to be a friend of yours if I may. I promise I will be good. Watch over you when you sleep." Oliver chuckled.
"He's a very clever dinosaur, Grammy. He's very nice, 'cause he's vegetarian."
"I can see he's very nice, Oliver. It seems he'd like to sleep with you at night, and at least you can go to bed knowing he won't eat you up." Oliver chuckled.
"Don't be silly, Grammy. He's far too small to eat me up. I'm way bigger than he is."
"You are indeed. But then again, even small creatures can be very dangerous, you know."
"You mean like the colourful grass frog? I saw a programme, Grammy. You won't believe what happened to the grass frog."
"What happened, sausage?"
"Well, the bird swallowed up the grass frog, and then the bird died, and the tiny grass frog jumped out of the bird's beak. Daddy said the poison on the tiny frog's skin killed the bird. It was horrible because I cried for the frog at first, and then I cried for the bird."
"Well, that really is some story, Oliver. But I think you're talking about a tree frog. They're very tiny frogs, incredibly colourful, and they've got a very toxic, poisonous skin. So it doesn't surprise me at all that the bird died. But what an interesting story." Later that evening, I read Oliver a bedtime story, tucking him up into bed. My husband and I were sitting down together in the living room, having watched some television together. "Well, that wasn't so bad, was it?" "What, do you mean the movie?" I asked my husband. "I beg to differ. I didn't enjoy it at all." My husband rolled his eyes. "No, sweetness, I'm not talking about the movie. Seeing Nick again. Seeing our son again, I mean." "Well, it was very good to see him, but I thought he looked rather worn out and fatigued, I have to say." "Well, I suspect it's down to the alterations that they're doing to their property. I'm afraid those kind of household improvements can drain you exponentially. Remember when we moved to this place and extended the kitchen? It was absolutely exhausting. We lived on takeaways for 2 weeks, do you remember? That's true, I do remember. But I still thought there was more to Nick's exhaustion than just the alterations they're doing to their house. The following morning I was preparing blueberry pancakes for breakfast, and was surprised that little Oliver was not up and about already. I was used to my grandson rising very early, but when I entered his bedroom, he was sound asleep. The strangest thing of all was the window was wide open, and frisky cool air was blowing into his room. So I reached out to close the window. I was surprised to see that there was mud on the inner pane of the window, and what looked like an imprint of my grandson's sneakers. Had Oliver climbed out of the window during the night, into the flower bed below? I could see some of the flowering shrubs had indeed been crushed, as if someone had been standing over them. It would be easy enough to get through the window if you were Oliver's size, but I told myself I was sorely mistaken. He wouldn't do that, would he? I promptly closed the window behind me and sat down next to my grandson, who suddenly opened his eyes as if he'd sensed my presence. I noticed the seemingly unusually tired, normally sprightly 7-year-old, with his ubiquitous amount of energy, seemed very lethargic this morning. "You're a sleepyhead, love. Your father tells me you're usually the first one up and about in the morning. It's 9 o'clock now. Everybody else is up except for you."
9 o'clock, Grammy,
said Oliver, sitting up with a start.
"But I never ever get up this late."
"Well, you did this morning, didn't you, Sausage? Never you mind. You were obviously very, very tired, weren't you? The good news is in this house, you can sleep as late as you like. We don't stand on ceremony here."
"I was just playing all night with my new friend. That's why I was so tired, 'cause I never got much sleep."
"Your new friend?" I said, raising a questionable brow. "Who is this new friend of yours? Are you talking about Spike, your dinosaur?"
"No, my other friend. His name's Susan. He's really nice, Grammy. Really, really nice."
"Susan?" I said, thinking my grandson had conjured up an imaginary friend with a rather peculiar name. "Well, I've never heard of such a name. It sounds foreign, certainly interesting. Is there a boy at your school with such a name?" I inquired.
"No, silly. Susan isn't like you or me. His name is very, very special. It means warrior spirit. That's what he told me." "What does my name mean, Grammy?" "Susan says names are very, very important. He says that names affect your whole destiny and what you become one day. He says his mother had to think about his name for many long weeks before he was even born. His whole family gathered together to decide what to call him. They chose to call him Warrior Spirit because his mummy said she could tell he was going to be very strong when he got older. You should see his mummy, Grammy. She's very, very big." He chuckled, reaching his hand up to point to the wall. "You see where that picture ends? She's as tall as that." "That's 10 foot, my dear. Nobody is that tall." "Susan's mother is that tall, Grammy. She's very, very hairy." "Sweetheart, you mustn't talk like that about a lady. It's very, very rude." "But it's true. She is hairy." "It may be true, love, but you don't go up to a fat person and say, 'Hello, you're fat,' do you?" "No, because it's not a nice thing to do." "There you go. You don't go telling people they're hairy either. It's called being polite. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Oliver nodded his head solemnly. "But I never told her she was hairy, Grammy." "Well, I'm glad to hear that then. So you saw Susan's mother, did you?" I asked him curiously, wondering how far-fetched my grandson's fictitious imagination really was. He wasn't only dreaming up an imaginary friend who was about his age, but their mother as well. I saw his mummy. At first she was cross with Susan for waking me up 'cause Susan knew I was here and was tapping on the window. I woke up and I was shocked at first, Grammy, but he spoke to me in my head and told me he wanted to play with me.
Well, that's very nice, love, I said, deciding that little Oliver had quite the imagination on him. But then again, he was an only child, so it made perfect sense to me that when he was lonely, he made up for Tisha's friends to compensate for being alone.
You didn't answer my question, Grammy.
Sorry, love, what question are you talking about?
What does my name mean? Susan wants to know what Oliver means.
Well, we will find out shortly enough, won't we? I'll look it up on Google for you. But before we do that, I want you to get dressed right away, brush your teeth, and come down to breakfast. You don't want those fluffy pancakes I've cooked for you to get cold, do you? I made them especially for you, with a blueberry compote. You're going to love them.
I'm not allowed to eat pancakes, Grammy, because they have gluten.
My pancakes are extra special, Oliver. They contain no gluten. You like pancakes, don't you?
I love pancakes, Grammy. Yummy, yummy, yummy.
It was later that morning, when my husband was doing a jigsaw puzzle with Oliver, that I went into his bedroom to make his bed up for him. I pulled back the sheets, and to my immense horror there was mud all over them, along with a few stray leaves. Worse still, his pyjamas, especially at the bottom, were filthy dirty, as if he'd been playing out of doors. I was more than a little perplexed by all of this, so I walked gingerly over to the window to examine it at closer inspection, and sure enough there was a revealing trail of dirt on the windowsill, along with a smear imprint that had obviously come from a pair of sneakers. I'd seen it earlier in the morning and dismissed it out of hand. My grandson's sneakers, furthermore, were lying beneath the window on the floor, completely congealed with mud. It had been raining a lot recently, but why were his sneakers in such a grubby state? I knew at once the answer to that question, of course. My naughty, mischievous little grandson must have sneakily climbed out of the window during the night. That's why the shrubs beneath the window were crushed. I knew little kids got up to mischief, of course I did, but a prank like this left me feeling distinctly unsettled. I didn't like the thought of little Oliver wandering around our yard in the middle of the night, even though I reasoned it was perfectly safe for him to do so. I hurriedly went to the living room, carrying my grandson's sneakers in my hands, to speak to little Oliver about his idiosyncratic nocturnal activities. "Hello, love," said my husband, looking up at me in surprise. "You should see Oliver here. He's quite nifty with this jigsaw puzzle we're doing. He seems to know which piece goes where. He's a lot better than me at doing this."
Come and see, Grammy. We're finishing a jigsaw quickly. It's of a lighthouse in Scotland, Grammy. I wish I could go there, you know.
"Well, it is a lovely, lovely, lovely jigsaw, isn't it?" I agreed. "Your pops bought that puzzle when we visited Scotland years ago."
Did you visit this lighthouse, Grammy? The one in the picture here?
"We did indeed. It had hundreds and hundreds of stairs. By the time I climbed to the top, I thought I would pass out. Isn't that right, Laurie?" My husband nodded. "Your Grammy couldn't cope with all those stairs. She was huffing and puffing all the way up."
Like this?
asked Oliver, beginning to blow out warm air from his lungs. "Exactly like that," I said, to which Oliver began to chuckle. My husband looked up at me quizzically. "What are you doing there, love, with those dirty sneakers in your hands?" "Are those Oliver's sneakers?" my husband asked. "They're covered in mud. How on earth did that happen?" "I just want to know the answer to the question myself, Oliver. How did you get your sneakers so filthy dirty? I also noticed, Sausage, that your pyjamas and bed sheets were absolutely covered in mud. Did you happen to sneak out of the window during the night? Now, I'm not going to be angry with you. I just need to know the answer. I noticed the shrubs beneath the window were rather crushed." Oliver hung his head in shame.
I told you, Grammy. I was playing with Susan last night. There's been lots of rain. It's muddy everywhere. I'm sorry if I made a big mess.
Sausage, don't apologise. I don't mind cleaning up after you. But I don't think it's a very good idea to go playing with Susan in the middle of the night. If you want to play with him, do so during daylight hours in your bedroom. You need to sleep, love, or you'll be exhausted during the day. I mean, look what time you got up this morning. You've never been up that late before, have you?
My grandson did not answer me, but he did have the grace to look rather bashful. My husband gave me a puzzled, rather bemused look, as if he was wondering what the hell I was talking about. I don't think he completely grasped that his grandson had been climbing through the bedroom window in the middle of the night to go and play with a make-believe invisible friend that didn't even exist. Was he an insomniac, I wondered? This was news to me.
Grammy, you never told me what Oliver means. You said you would look it up on Google. I need to tell Susan what it means.
I decided that Susan was obviously an imaginary friend. I mean, what else could he be? And for some reason my grandson was going exploring in the middle of the night by climbing sneakily out of the window. Maybe it was a novelty to him to be able to easily climb out of a window, given he lived in a double-storey house at home. My son was right. It would seem Oliver was a bundle of mischief, and I'd have to keep a beady eye on him. From now on, I had promptly decided I'd make absolutely certain that I locked his window every night, so he couldn't get any funny ideas and go crawling out of the window again. I mean, I couldn't blame him for behaving like this. I imagine living with Sasha Fontaine was like living a sheltered existence with rigidly strict rules. No wonder the poor kid rebelled. I'd likely have done the same if I'd been raised by such a controlling mother. I decided to say nothing more about the matter, as enigmatic as it was, as I was resolutely determined I was not going to put my poor mollycoddled grandson on a leash.
You wanted to know what your name means, Oliver. Well, I looked it up on Google for you. Oliver means olive tree. It's a lovely name, I told him. Oliver looked disappointed.
That's horrible, Granny. Really horrible. I don't want to be a silly tree. Susan's name means warrior spirit. My name is just a tree. That is so boring.
I don't agree, love. Trees are spectacular. And olive trees, let me tell you, are very, very beautiful.
The following evening, when me and my husband had gone to bed, I bolted the window shut in my grandson's bedroom, and after I kissed him tenderly good night, I retired to the living room to watch a nature programme on television with my husband.
What was all that stuff about Oliver's sneakers? He asked me. They were coated in mud.
I shrugged my shoulders. I think he sneakily climbed out of the window during the night, to play with a so-called imaginary friend, if you like. He must have put his sneakers on. His pyjamas and bed sheets were filthy dirty, let me tell you. Nick wasn't wrong about him. You need to have eyes in the back of your head with that one. I don't think he's afraid of the dark either, like I was when I was his age.
What?
I know. Don't worry about it, love. I bolted the window shut so Oliver can't get out or up to any of his tricks again. But can you blame him? I mean, with a mother like Sasha. When he comes here, he feels like a bird in a gilded cage that is finally set free to fly again. No wonder he sneaks out of the window when the cat's away. The mice do play, don't they say that? I know it's cliché, but it's certainly true.
Well, what harm can it really do, love, when you think about it? Said my husband, beginning to physically relax. Nobody goes into that backyard of ours. And provided he doesn't venture further afield into the wood groves behind the grove belonging to that farmer, well, then I think we should go easy on the boy. When I was a child, I was always sneaking out of the house, I'll let you know. But we mustn't let it happen again. I don't think it's a good idea. The boy needs a good night's sleep, doesn't he? You're right, if Sasha wasn't so damn strict, the poor little mite would not be so eager to do the things he's clearly not allowed to do at home. Sasha makes him wear a straitjacket.
My thoughts exactly, I said.
And all this stuff and nonsense about Oliver being gluten intolerant. My foot! He ate an entire piece of chocolate cake and was absolutely fine.
Of course he was fine. But Sasha's got these wild notions that a 7-year-old boy should be living on lentils and carrot sticks. I mean, if she carries on this way, denying him the privileges of other children, one day he will rebel, and God forbid, will lightly wolf everything he wasn't allowed to eat down like a street dog, and as a consequence become as large as a beluga whale.
Hear that? Said my husband suddenly, looking at me with a start.
Hear what? I asked. I don't hear anything, love.
It's a car rolling up our drive, said my husband, walking over to the living room window and pulling back the curtain swiftly. You've got to be kidding me.
What is it, love?
It's the police.
The police? Are you sure?
I am very sure it is the police. They're parking outside our front door. What the hell could they possibly want at this time of night? My husband and I exchanged disquieted looks, and then we heard the ominous knock at the front door. I could feel the bile rising up in the back of my throat. Surely no good thing could come from receiving a visit from the police in the middle of the night. Could something untoward have happened to my Nick? Please, God, no. Don't you worry, love, about this. You stay there. I'll see what this is all about. Don't you go worrying, love. It's probably nothing. Before long, my husband was leading 2 police officers into our living room, and by the grim expressions on their faces, I knew that their visit was not nothing. I knew the news they had to convey to us. Whatever it was, it could not be good. This is my wife, Susie, said my husband. Could you please tell us what is going on, officers? Let me first establish that you are both Mr. and Mrs. Gozeman, the parents of Nick Gozeman, who's married to Sasha Fontaine. Is that right? That is right, said my husband. Well, I'm afraid to tell you, sir, there's been a car accident on the dual carriageway. I'm sorry to inform you, but your son and his wife were involved in a head-on collision.
Oh, my goodness, I gasped. Are they all right? They're not dead, are they? Please, no, not my Nick.
They're alive, ma'am. Both of them are. But they've been seriously injured, I'm afraid. It was a dreadful accident, let me tell you. The black BMW your son was driving was a complete write-off. They are very lucky to be alive. I let out a shrill scream and fainted. Everything after that went black, and the day that followed was a blur, as if I wasn't even participating in it. It was almost as if it went by without me even noticing. I seem to remember visiting my son in hospital. That I do remember very, very vaguely, while our kindly neighbour stayed in the house to watch over little Oliver for us. I was unable to recognise my son. His face was swollen and puffy and double its size, and he was attached to so many tubes, and the same could be said for poor Sasha Fontaine. They both looked pretty beat up and had undergone numerous operations, but I could not keep track of all the procedures they had to go through. It went all over my head. All I cared about that Nick was going to be all right. Nothing else mattered at all. I seem to recall telling the doctor that there had to be some grievous mistake here, that body lying in the bed, the mangled-looking body that I barely recognised, did not belong to my son, but regretfully it did. I had no idea what they'd been doing in the car on that dual carriageway, but I suspected that maybe they'd gone out to dinner that night, or even a concert. I knew my son was most insistent in treating Sasha to a date night once a week. I was told by the police that a car going in a different direction zigzagged onto the opposite lane and charged straight into my son's black BMW. Both my son and his wife were extracted from the vehicle by the jaws of life, so the fact that my son Nick was attached to these breathing tubes was infinitely better than seeing his corpse lying in a body bag. It would seem the driver of the other car had got off extremely lightly, was barely injured, with only a few cuts and scrapes, which really does boggle the mind. Mrs. Gozeman, said the doctor to me, your son and your daughter-in-law are very lucky to have escaped with their lives. But it is still going to be a long road to recovery, I'm afraid. I mean, your son is far worse off than Sasha. I think we can safely say they are both out of the woods now. The doctor's words brought me such relief. I do recall throwing my arms around him in gratitude. I knew that for the next few weeks that little Oliver would be staying with us indefinitely, but telling him about his parents' fortuitous accident was something that concerned me greatly. How do you tell your little grandchild that their parents are barely recognizable, but at least they were alive, and that was all that actually mattered. So I was extremely grateful for small mercies. 3 mornings later I still had not plucked up the courage to tell little Oliver about his parents' accident, but now was as good a time as any. I gingerly slipped into Oliver's bedroom. I was stunned to see the window was wide open. When I had locked it 3 nights earlier, there was mud all over the pane again, and I realized he must have sneaked out of the window during the night. Once again his sneakers were congealed with mud. The boy was incorrigible. What was this fixation he had to climb out of his bedroom window in the middle of the night for? Furthermore, how had he managed to open a bolted window? Oliver sat up in bed when he saw I'd entered his room. I noticed he looked once again extremely fatigued, like someone who's been deprived of a good night's sleep.
What's the matter, Grammy? Your eyes are red. Have you been crying? Are you sad?
Maybe I'm just a little sad, Oliver. I need to tell you something, I said, taking my grandson's hand in mine. Your mum and dad were involved in a car accident on the dual carriageway about 3 nights ago. Do you remember when Mrs. Boulder came to babysit you? Oliver nodded. It happened then. We had to rush off to see your parents in hospital. The police came to tell us they'd been in, a very bad accident.
Where are they now, Grammy?
They're in hospital, I'm afraid, Sausage.
Are they going to be all right, Grammy?
Asked Oliver, tears springing down his cheeks. They're going to be fine, Sausage, I said, wrapping Oliver in my arms, hugging him close to me. It takes time for the body to heal. But I've been visiting your dad for 3 days now, and he's recovering very well, and the doctor says they're both going to be fine, both your mother and father.
You mean like when I fall over and graze my knee, and it really hurts? Is Daddy hurting like that? Sometimes it can take a long time to grow a full scab,
That's right, my love. Your parents are going to take quite some time to get fully better. It was in that moment that I noticed the dreadful state of Oliver's bed. Why are there leaves in your hair, Sausage? And there's mud on the window pane. The window's wide open. I locked it 3 days ago. How did you get out of the window last night, Oliver?
It was easy to open,
said Oliver proudly.
I was playing with Sujan last night, Grammy. Please don't be cross with me. Guess what? When I told Sujan my name means olive tree, do you know what he said?
What did he say, Sausage? I asked, looking at my grandson through wilting eyes. How could I possibly scold him for his naughty behaviour when I'd just imparted such dreadful news to him that I'd been cowardice to share with him until now? I was surprised he'd taken the news so well. I couldn't help but feel annoyed that he had gone out at night again. What on earth was he thinking? He was only 7 years old, for goodness sake. The little rogue had industriously managed to escape through the window by unlocking it. How he'd done this, I couldn't comprehend. The little boy was more resourceful than I ever gave him credit for.
Well, Grammy, Susan says that my name is very, very special because trees are special and an olive tree is a spiritual tree.
Well, there you go, then. Your name has a very beautiful meaning, doesn't it? I told you Oliver is a lovely name. I was privately wondering if an invisible friend would tell my grandson something so insightful like this, but I brushed those thoughts under the carpet, as my mind was centred over my son's recuperation in hospital. What's that, love, over there on the floor? I asked,
That sparkling thing. It looks like a lady's bracelet. What is it doing among your toys, Sausage? It's a piece of your mummy's jewellery, isn't it? It looks expensive. What is it doing here?
Oh, Grammy, please don't tell Mummy about this, 'cause she'd be very cross if she knew. And when Mummy's cross, she can be really horrible. I shouldn't have done it, but I took it from her bureau when she wasn't looking. She hid it away in her secret drawer. I didn't even know that our bureau had a secret drawer, but I saw it, and then I went to look, and I like it because it sparkles. I know I'm not a girl, but I like to look at it because it has 3 pretty stones in the front. It reminds me of my best marble, but I'd never wear it because I'm not a sissy.
Of course you're not a sissy, Sausage. Whoever said that to you? You're allowed to admire beautiful things, you know. I'm sure your mummy wouldn't be happy with you taking her bracelet, though. I mean, it does look rather special. I went over to retrieve the bracelet that was casually splayed out on the bedroom floor and inspected it more closely. This is very lovely. Where did your mummy get it, do you know? Oliver shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly.
I told you I found it in her secret drawer. She doesn't know I know about it. But I forgot to put it back.
Well, when you get home, you must put it back, Sausage, where you found it. I won't tell your mummy about it. It'll be our little secret.
Thank you, Grammy. You're the very best. I promise you I will put it back.
Make sure you do, Sausage. I wouldn't want you getting into trouble with your mummy. As I was studying the smooth silver bracelet in my hand, a name in the back of the bracelet got my immediate attention. Mariette Marlowe Lane, followed by the words, I love you forever. My blood ran cold when I saw the name on the back of the bracelet. Mariette Margot Lane was the name of a woman found bludgeoned to death that I'd heard about on the local radio. Her body had been found in an alleyway close to a parking lot, where her car had been parked on a shopping trip to the local town. It had been all over the radio and local news broadcasts. No one knew what had happened to the lovely lady, but Mariette's husband had said one of the things missing at the scene was a thick silver bracelet that he'd given his wife that she never ever took off her wrist, with her full married name engraved on the back, and of course the words, I love you forever. So there we are. That is the end of part 2 of our story. Part 3 is tomorrow night, and I look forward to you joining me then. So let's see you tomorrow night then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.